Hello, and welcome to episode number 269 of the LSR podcast. My name is Matt Brown, joined each and every week by the brightest minds in all of the gaming industry. With me, I have two of those. Pat Evans, Sam McQuillan, going to join us as we go through what's going on with the CFTC in those meetings. Arizona, is there some stuff maybe coming up that can get these sports books back in the black again? Oh, it's been so bad for them. We know that. Of course, got some early numbers from March that look pretty promising, and we'll talk about the NCAA playing nice with the sports books. But Pat, let's kick things off here, since we might get into some good news a little bit. Let's start off with some bad news here. We were rocking and rolling there for a while. We don't normally see something come out of nowhere and make it all the way to law, so I guess it was a long shot no matter what, but R.I.P. Hawaii.
Yeah, it was an exciting journey this year in the Aloha State. I think we all were really excited about that, Cinderella run of sorts. Rep. Daniel Holt's bill got through multiple committees in the House, which it had never done before in the first, but it had gone one committee. Got past the House. Of course, they stripped out tax figures and license fees to let the Senate discuss it because they were worried it was a little too low. The Senate went ahead and re-put those original figures in before they passed it, so it had to go to a conference committee, and I think everybody kind of figured, well, okay, both chambers passed it, and Governor Josh Green had signaled he was all for it and ready to sign it. And then it didn't go anywhere in the conference. So
of course,
we hit a deadline on Friday. It's done for the year, which is, it is a little sad there after that Cinderella run. But hey, that is, as you mentioned, farther than it's ever gone before, out of nowhere. I think that might have a little bit of optimism going into it next year. Then there is a little study group that was started up as well to kind of look at the legalized gambling industry or potential of in Hawaii there. So that'll be fun to kind of keep an eye on heading into next year. And then Nebraska also last week went ahead and finished up there. And that one's a little interesting. We had talk of it last year in a special session to help relieve property tax burden on residents. And it didn't go anywhere in the special session, but it picked up to expand online here this session. They, of course, have in-person sports betting in a couple of their casinos, which voters voted for back in 2020. And this would have just put it back on the ballot for 2026 to legalize online sports betting in Nebraska. So there was some, kind of vote uncertainties. They needed 33 senators to vote for it. They had about 30, according to sponsor Senator Elliot Bostar. Because there was a filibuster, it had to go from 30 to 33 votes. So that one, he pulled it just because he didn't have the votes he needed to get it passed through two final votes. It's a very complicated situation there in Nebraska, but it didn't get it done. But that's, it's going on the ballot. It would go on the ballot next fall anyway, so they could bring it back next session kind of for the same thing. And there are legislators there that are kind of worried that there could be a sportsbook funded initiative for the ballot, which they wanted to get ahead of. So we'll see kind of what develops there in Nebraska in that sense. And then South Carolina, I mean, talk about states you didn't think anything would happen in. I don't think anything is happening, but it was talked about in a committee for a little bit. Sportsbooks in South Carolina are not a likely soon development, at least not until probably Georgia gets up and running, but they were at least talking about it in a committee. So, yeah, not a lot of fun news on the legislative front, but news nonetheless.
Hey, listen, it's we started things off on the sad note. We'll just kind of ramp things up as we go on throughout the podcast here. I mean, in Hawaii, you did at least have them come out and say, like, look, we got to do something to bring more money into this state. And so, unless somebody comes up with a better idea, we probably need to take this a little bit more seriously. So good stuff going on there. But like you mentioned, in South Carolina, the governor has come out and already said, I don't like this. Not going to happen. So,
and he's in office till 2027. So, they've got a ways to go.
All right, Sam McQuillan sitting here riding high off of your New York Knicks, not blowing the series, at least not yet so far.
Yes.
Do it rocking and rolling here. So, we said last week can't be a podcast without something about Kalshi. And honestly, the original rundown, I thought we were going to get by, and then we get some news here about some stuff that went on with those meetings we talked about, and now we have a story.
Yeah, I snuck in there like Karl Anthony Towns being guarded by Tobias Harris on that last minute shot. Shout out to the Knicks. Kalshi, sort of some quiet news. We haven't really been talking about them as much lately in the terms of actually things changing. It kind of had been status quo. It was, hey, they were going to take a lot of money on March Madness. They did. Some figures out here that they actually, everything they do, it's not just sports markets, it's prediction markets in general. They were really, they made a name for themselves with the election and everything. And these figures out here, if you want to see how much sports is a part of their business now, over the weekend of April 26th to the 27th, so this past weekend, 78% of all their volume was on sports. So that's not stuff like award shows, not stuff like politics. I mean, obviously there's no major election right now, so that's going to be down naturally. But just to give you an idea of how big this business has become very quickly for these prediction market companies. But the bit of news that we're going to highlight is that the CFTC, the federal agency that has historically been in charge of regulating these prediction markets. Again, not sports betting, so they want to be regulated on the federal level. They had been kind of tasked with figuring this out. They said they were going to have a meeting. That meeting never really happened. And the news now is that it's now not going to happen, maybe ever. Could be rescheduled, but they canceled it indefinitely late on Friday. So kind of a late news drop there. They had called this meeting the first step in kind of figuring out this whole mess. You have states writing to them. You have lawmakers writing to them. You have saying, hey, please make a decision here. We're telling you that we should be the ones regulating it. We see this as sports betting. Nevada has their lawsuit. New Jersey has their lawsuit. Interestingly enough, in the Nevada lawsuit where the judge allowed Kalshi and these other prediction markets, not just Kalshi, to continue doing the sports stuff, he said one of the main reasons is, the CFTC hasn't said anything. So because they haven't said anything, I'm going to keep kind of allowing it for the time being. I'm just kind of paraphrasing there. It's not exactly what he said, but their silence has been a big factor in letting this continue. So it's just going to get crazier now that we have no way in. I think a lot of the sports books and everybody else in the industry was really waiting for them to say something. But now that might not come ever, what's next? We've seen at the state level, which Pat has done a great job covering, them taking enforcements and Kalshi filing lawsuits in those cases. So like we often talk about, it's all going to end up with lawyers in the end and be decided in the courts. But this is not a good sign for the people who want it to be regulated as sports betting.
For Pat, Arizona, we're getting some more of these letters sent out to these non-regulated books out there.
Yeah, Arizona has been interesting in that sense. I think, they sent out a couple PSAs early this year kind of warning users or customers or whatever, Arizona residents, to kind of say, be careful, make sure you're wagering on licensed and regulated gambling sites. They had a sweepstakes page to make sure, you're not using real money and you're not, funding it with real money.
You're not betting.
Correct.
Yes.
And they warned you. They also sent out a PSA about those. We talked about it a week or two ago about the online casino sites that are posing as legitimate extensions of Arizona casinos. And they're not real, they don't have legalized online gambling. Well, this week or last week, I guess, they actually sent out cease and desist orders to 6 websites. They were kind of various. They were sweepstakes sites, they moto.us and Epic Hunts, they Sportsbook Generez, I've never heard of that one, but MyBookie and BetUS, and then also ProfitX peer-to-peer exchange. So they, after PSAs and watching and looking at the unlicensed market very carefully, they went ahead and sent 6 of them. I would not be surprised if we see more coming out of Arizona. I mean, right now, took a break. Obviously, I'm not working on it right now as we speak here, but I'm working on another story about Michigan, which sent out nearly 30 cease and desists this month to various
racking them up.
Unlicensed and unregulated websites. So, I mean, yeah, Arizona, just the latest one, and it's kind of at the end of a long string of, hey, watch what you're doing. Now they're saying, no, you can't do that here.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting ones that I noticed in the article that you wrote just specifically about this last batch from Arizona was that they included Profit X in there, which is not an offshore, but they are running a peer-to-peer book here, where I think they're trying to kind of get around some of the different things with that, because it's peer-to-peer, not betting against the house itself and stuff. So it is not being just targeted to the offshores, but also starting to see some of these other ancillary pieces get added to all this.
Yeah, and I think just we're going to see more and more of that. Just of these, as you know, as we talk about the Kalshis of the world, and the Kalshi getting lots of them themselves, but you know, all these like auxiliary kind of websites creeping in from the fringes. I think we're going to see more and more regulators say, "Hey, wait a second, you can't do that unless you're, you know, going through us somehow."
Right. Some sort of licensing process, my friend's got to be involved with all that. All right, Sam. So we talked about how chalky everything was in March Madness. We talked about how chalky the Super Bowl and everything, all the things that went on here, and all these sports books. How are they going to turn the lights on? Well, we do have the NBA playoffs. We have the NHL playoffs. We got the Kentucky Derby coming up as well, and these are all featured betting events that maybe can help these guys just, you know, continue to show up to work every day and have the computers work.
Yeah, so this is just a reminder of how much money it takes to not only be a good company in the sports betting business and make a lot of money, but just to survive in general. Because over the past 6 months, you know, you had the NFL season where it was historically the worst ever. Sportsbooks had to weather that storm, and then they had March Madness, where usually, you know, some Cinderellas make a run. There's a lot of teams to bet on, but this year it was kind of all the favorites won. Now they did dodge a bullet with Duke losing in the last minute in the Final Four. I think about 50% of the handle in the NCAA title market was on Duke winning. But unfortunately, because of the reporting rules in terms of finances and everything, that doesn't get included in this upcoming quarter's results, Q1. So Q1 shaping up to be very brutal for the sportsbook operators. They'll report their earnings this month, next month, over the next couple of weeks. But now they're looking to some other major events. The NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs underway. No single game elimination there, so it's a lot less volatile for them. And you got the Kentucky Derby coming up as well, which, you know, sportsbooks kind of talk, that's like their Super Bowl for horse racing. And not only does it help them get a lot of money on just an event that's the whole liability is different because, again, the odds change. It's pari-mutuel. People are betting all throughout, not trying to get different numbers. And there's so many different horses, so many different factors. So with that, they just want people to bet as much as possible. It's less about managing risk. But they, you know, the investment community, they've been aware that, you know, sometimes you lose in sports betting, but the losses are really racking up now. So if you have another quarter where it's just, oh, we got really unlucky, it's kind of like there's been all of these really unlucky things that have happened. At what point does it start becoming a trend instead of unlucky? Citizens JMP estimates that FanDuel and DraftKings lost a combined $185 million from March Madness. That's money they lost from it. So they're going to really be hoping that the NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, again, the Kentucky Derby, all make them a lot more money and they do better. Historically, this quarter has been better from a hold perspective just because of, you know, you have more Major League Baseball as well, more games on, less volatility, even though there is a slight dip in overall betting. But FanDuel, DraftKings, they have lofty hold percentage targets, about 17% for FanDuel over the next 10 years. DraftKings, I think, wants to be over 11% at the end of this year. They're definitely not on track for that right now, so kind of playing catch up for the rest of the year. It'll be really interesting to see, too, how they kind of change their strategy, you know, how much closer we get and how things shape up. You know, how much more can they hammer you over the head with same game parlays and other high margin bets like that? They're very creative, so I'm sure they'll figure out different ways to do it. But definitely something you might notice them acting a little different over the next couple of months if the playoffs and the Derby don't go their way.
Yeah, one of those things we know FanDuel very into horse racing, owns TVG. We know DraftKings launched the DK Horse product as well to expand into the horse racing aspect of everything. And so with the Kentucky Derby coming up, at the very least, I mean, it gives them another customer acquisition point, right, throughout the course of the year, where it's not centered around the Super Bowl or March Madness, which we know are the two and the beginning of football season. Those three are kind of the real big touch points as far as the customer acquisition. But with the Kentucky Derby, everybody becomes an expert for 24 hours on horse racing, as y'all know, and so it does give them kind of a odd time of year chance to go in and get some new customers to come in there and take advantage of their products. So we'll see how that all plays out. And again, hopefully it's not chalk all the way across the playoffs and the Kentucky Derby and all that as well. And these guys can again continue to turn the lights on for us and take our bets. Pat, we get some early numbers here from March, and we said March Madness. We know that was a huge betting. If we talk about just actual money bet, single day, yes, Super Bowl, but we talk about just overall, was considering there's so many games and how long it lasts, actually March Madness being the largest bet on event throughout the course of the sports betting calendar. And early results show that, people definitely did that. They went and bet.
Yeah. Before I jump into that, can we just recognize journalism for the Kentucky Derby?
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes.
That's the favorite
the
horse right now.
Yes, there's journalism, and then there's one other that has something to do with something as well. But yeah, so there's
it's just fun. It's a fun note. Anyway, our Eric Ramsey, our good friend over here at Legal Sports Report, it has a great article up. We'll run through that real quick. They have 16 states have reported monthly numbers so far for March Madness, including 11 that saw increased betting activity from last year. 10% in same state reporting. So just a huge year for sports betting over March Madness. And it was great for DraftKings, who for the first time generated more revenue than FanDuel during March Madness. So that was kind of crazy. But Eric goes ahead and breaks down everything you need to see. So you should head over to LSR and read that.
Yeah, just going to be some massive numbers coming there. Journalism and publisher are both in the field. So journalism and publisher, both in the Kentucky Derby field with all that. My lifetime ROI on the Kentucky Derby is like negative infinity. I don't think I've ever won like a single penny like betting the Kentucky Derby. And yet I just go
Are you betting this year?
I just go fire at random. I mean, like, look, I work with a couple of guys who fancy themselves, horse racing handicappers. I'm sure you can do it, and do it well. I don't get it. It's animals, and so you can't talk to them and see how they feel and like what's going on that day and all this stuff. So I don't know. I will probably take a handful of horses and I will just throw them in some sort of trifecta box and hope to get paid off big. And then even if I do hit it, I'll probably still be down lifetime on all the money that I put into the Kentucky Derby. But hey, it's the most fun 2 minutes in sports, right? Isn't that what they say with all that? All right, Sam, let's wrap things up here with a very interesting story that the NCAA is going to play nice with the sportsbooks.
Yeah, this one. So most sports leagues, they through their partnerships, they've been sharing official data with companies that work with sportsbooks. So essentially, sportsbooks have everything kind of backed up. A lot of that goes beyond just the live stats that happen, like rebounds, points, touchdowns, yards, and is actually goes deeper into player tracking. Like these companies, like Genius Sports, some of their competitors, Sport Radar, they track all this like logistical stuff. So if you think about all the stuff that teams have access to, it's through these companies that also work with the sportsbooks. The NCAA historically has not granted access of that data to sportsbooks. It hasn't prevented them from offering bets on different things, but it has limited them from offering markets that are offered on some other sports. Some of the more time consuming or time needy, time crunch kind of stuff. There's been talk that eventually this could lead to, you can bet how fast a guy's going to be running down the field, stuff like that, maybe far away, but the NCAA hasn't allowed that until now. They just expanded their partnership with Genius through 2032, allowing use of the official data as well as use of the logos as well for any of the Genius sportsbook partners. So that's a lot of the sportsbooks out there work with Genius again, and it's going to let them have all the NCAA branding be in the app. It's going to grant them access to this data. Interestingly enough, a few years back when I was at Bloomberg writing about taxes, I was writing about kind of this official data thing with the NCAA, and there was a dispute over who owns the data itself. This was before NIL and before athletes could get paid legally. I think there was a group suing. I'm not sure where the lawsuit ever ended up. saying that, you can't give our injury and our medical records to these sports books or these companies and make money off of it because it belongs to us. That's always been a dispute in college athletics, is who actually owns what's going on in the field, your personal data. So that's an interesting wrinkle here. Why it's coming now, I think just a matter of time. The NCAA has never wanted to look like they're getting in bed with sportsbooks immediately. Remember, this is the leading group on the lawsuit that sued to stop sports betting from becoming kind of legal everywhere. Now they obviously make money from it. And they've kind of, if you look at what they've done compared to the leagues, they've kind of slowly kind of tried to ease in. Everyone has eased in slowly, but the NCAA has always kind of historically been, not wanting to put their names next to a sports book. Now their names will be on sports books, used on sports books. I think it comes as just the environment has changed a lot over the years. Now there's a lot of focus on problem gaming, responsible gaming. That's part of the partnership as well. The books are going to be sharing geolocation data, login information about their players with the NCAA. This comes as all these investigations have been happening in college sports. How those have been working is the NCAA hasn't been asking for certain things. The books have been giving them, but now this kind of ensures they kind of have all this information ahead of time, theoretically, to prevent and crack down on more of these kinds of integrity issues that have popped up. But yeah, strengthening the relationship here. And it definitely probably would not have happened a couple of years ago, before NIL, before kind of the environment and our whole kind of public perception around sports betting has definitely moved in a certain direction over the last couple of years.
Guys, everything we do absolutely free here, legalsportsreport.com. You can find all the words to all of these stories. And if you haven't done so already, do appreciate you subscribing, rating, and reviewing. Helps us climb those charts and more people find this very here podcast for those that are interested in the business side of all of this craziness. Guys, as you were talking there, Sam, I went and looked up the full field. Journalism is not only the favorite, but is also, I found a list of the power rankings for this. Also, the number one power rated horse as we enter this. And I was just going to pick a horse based off of a cool name. I was like, you know what? Give me Flying Mohawk, and then I see that it is power rated 18th out of 20. So I don't know about my Flying Mohawk anymore. Like when it comes to the Kentucky Derby, guys, I might have to rethink. Good odds
on him though.
Yeah, I got to rethink where I'm going to put my money now. So, well, I guess you two will be on journalism. We'll see how we go from there. What about Sovereignty? That's a good name. Sovereignty, Grande. That's a good name. Final Gambit. Final Gambit. A
sports writer's dream.
Yeah, seriously. Sandman. This is
I like great. Sandman. Come out of the 17 posts. Never won before in that position, but he's got 6-1 good odds. So
look at you knowing what posts they're coming out of and everything. Do you do the horse racing betting? Do you do the horse?
Not at all. I have a good friend of mine from Louisville, Kentucky. And every year I just ask her what she's doing, and it's made me some money in the past. So I actually just talked to her a little bit ago, and that's where 100% of my horse racing knowledge comes from.
But I like that you knew Sandman when I said Sandman. So there we go. Sandman going to get some money from me then too. So there we go. Flying Mohawk and Sandman coming in on
love it.
Coming in my tickets here, and we'll talk about how much money I lost whenever we get on the podcast next week, guys. For Pat, for Sam, I'm Matt. Talk to you guys next week.